In a surprising turn of events, India and China have decided to patch up their differences, much to the bewilderment of many. The question on everyone's lips is, did Donald Trump's aggressive trade policies inadvertently pave the way for this reconciliation? Let's delve into the details. The two Asian giants, India and China, have recently agreed to increase trade and resume direct flights, marking a significant diplomatic breakthrough. This comes after a tumultuous period following a deadly border clash in 2020 and amidst Donald Trump's unpredictable foreign policy moves. During Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to India, both nations committed to advancing talks on their disputed border, a contentious issue that has long strained relations. But here's where it gets controversial. The timing of this rapprochement aligns with growing friction between India and the United States, sparked by Trump's recent imposition of hefty tariffs on Indian goods. This has led many to speculate whether Trump's actions have inadvertently pushed India and China closer together. To understand the full picture, let's explore the specifics of their agreement and the steps taken to address their border dispute. The discussions covered a wide array of topics, including troop withdrawals from the Himalayan border, enhancing investment and trade flows, organizing more bilateral events, and facilitating travel access. A notable development was the reopening of several trading routes, such as the Lapulek Pass, Shipkila Pass, and Nathula Pass. An expert group will be formed to identify early harvest measures to improve border management, a proposal India had previously opposed out of concern that China might secure short-term gains without addressing underlying territorial integrity issues. Interestingly, China has reportedly agreed to address India's grievances regarding export restrictions on fertilizers, rare earth minerals, and tunnel boring machines, according to Indian media sources. However, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning stated that she was unaware of these media reports, adding that China is open to strengthening dialogue and cooperation with relevant countries to ensure global supply chain stability. In other developments, New Delhi and Beijing have agreed to restore direct flights, share river data, and ease visa restrictions for tourists, businesses, and journalists. These moves signal a renewed effort to foster cooperation and ease tensions. The leaders' statements have been positive, with Wang Yi meeting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval. Modi expressed optimism on social media, emphasizing the significance of stable and constructive ties between India and China for regional and global peace and prosperity. Doval echoed similar sentiments, highlighting a newfound atmosphere of peace and tranquility and acknowledging the need to address previous setbacks in their relationship. Wang Yi, during his discussions with Doval, stressed that the steady and healthy development of China-India relations serves the fundamental interests of both nations. Both sides should engage in dialogue to build trust and expand cooperation, focusing on areas like border control and demarcation negotiations. Modi is set to visit China later this month for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, marking his first trip to the country in 7 years. This visit will provide an opportunity to further strengthen ties and address outstanding issues. To fully comprehend the context, we must revisit the origins of the deteriorating relationship between India and China. In 2020, a violent confrontation along their Himalayan border resulted in the loss of lives on both sides, causing a significant freeze in diplomatic relations. The incident also impacted trade and air travel, as both countries deployed substantial security forces to border areas. In response to border tensions, India imposed restrictions on Chinese investments and banned several Chinese apps, including TikTok, citing security concerns. Despite heightened tensions, bilateral trade between the two nations remained robust, with India's imports from China increasing to over $100 billion from $65 billion in the fiscal year 2020 to 2021, driven by the country's reliance on Chinese raw materials for its electronics and pharmaceutical industries. The recent diplomatic overtures between India and China can be attributed, in part, to the geopolitical disruptions caused by Donald Trump's trade wars. as Trump raised tariffs on both countries earlier this year, particularly targeting India, which had been forging closer ties with the United States as a counterbalance to China. The stage was set for a realignment. Moreover, ongoing negotiations between India and the U.S. over free trade agreements have been contentious, with Trump accusing India of imposing high tariffs and restricting access to American goods. Similarly, China has been engaged in prolonged trade talks with the U.S. Against this backdrop, India and China have stepped up official exchanges and explored ways to relax trade barriers and facilitate the movement of people since Modi's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Kazan, Russia, last October. However, the decisive factor in accelerating the rapprochement was Trump's imposition of a 25% reciprocal tariff on India in June over its purchases of Russian oil, followed by a further hike to 50% a week later. This move has prompted a significant shift in India's diplomatic stance, jeopardizing the $200 billion U.S.-India trade relationship and potentially affecting thousands of jobs in the world's most populous nation. Critics argue that the U.S. has applied double standards in its tariff policy, considering China's higher imports of Russian oil compared to India's. Indian authorities have accused the U.S. of inconsistency in its treatment of nations importing Russian oil. While U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defends the lack of sanctions against China, citing its diversified oil sources, India's reliance on Russian oil has surged from less than 1% to over 40%, prompting accusations of profiteering from the conflict in Ukraine. Adding fuel to the fire, Trump's claim of securing a ceasefire between India and Pakistan has infuriated New Delhi, which refuses to acknowledge the U.S. president's role in the May 10th ceasefire that halted the 5-day war between the nuclear-armed neighbors. Trump's subsequent meeting with Pakistani Army's General Asim Munir has only exacerbated tensions. Despite Modi's efforts to cultivate a personal rapport with Trump, especially during his first term, the relationship has soured. Trump's repeated criticisms of India have strained ties, leaving Indian foreign policy experts concerned about the future direction of the relationship. The potential fallout could jeopardize India's economic progress over the past 3 decades and its position as an emerging power, traditionally bolstered by U.S. strategic support. As Sushant Singh, a lecturer in South Asian Studies at Yale University, notes, Trump's actions have disrupted India's strategic roadmap, possibly leading to uncertainty, realignment, or eventual rapprochement. The evolving dynamics between India and China may also impact the BRICS bloc, consisting of Brazil, Russia, South Africa, India, and China. With India and China hosting the 2026 and 2027 BRICS summits, respectively, and Trump's criticism of the bloc, there's potential for strengthened relations among its members. In conclusion, the recent thaw in India-China relations raises intriguing questions about the role of external factors, particularly Donald Trump's trade policies, in shaping diplomatic landscapes. As the dust settles, it remains to be seen how these developments will affect the broader geopolitical landscape and the future of multilateralism.